Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Summertime is upon us, and sometimes for those of us who are just starting our gardening, we try to figure out what the best thing to do is when it comes to the summertime months. Most of the time it's sunny, sometimes it's way too hot, and other times you might see a little seasonal bout of rain that just seems to be unmistakably strange. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a wonderful guest that we've had on our program before. She is author of the book, Grow Your Own Pharmacy. And today we're going to be talking about just that thing, summer gardening, a seasonal talk. And I'd like to welcome to our Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Linda Gray. Linda, thank you for joining us here on the program.
Oh, it's great to be here, Daniel. Hi.
Now, how is the weather in England compared to the United States right now?
Well, today it's been absolutely atrocious. I've been locked in my office all day. I haven't even bothered to go out.
Now, when you say atrocious, is it wet, rainy? What's going on over there?
Just pouring with rain, stormy. It feels like autumn at the moment. But
oh, my goodness.
Hey, you know.
Now,
it's July in England. What should we expect, really?
Yeah. Now,
what's it like in your part?
Well, right now, sunny blue skies. You know, you've got areas of the United States that are scorching hot. And so, you know, sometimes in summertime, you really just don't know. And I thought this would be an interesting topic, especially when it comes to maybe growing, you know, those summer crops, what the best ones are to deal with when it comes to the summer months.
Well, the thing is, I mean, a lot of the summer crops have been started in the spring. Mm-hmm. So most of the things that we're collecting now or are due to be collected over the next kind of month or two are plants that probably, you know, would have been started from seed earlier on in the year. However, there's lots of things you can do now. I mean, starting off winter crops is a good idea. But then again, you know, maintaining the ones that you already have out in the garden is important, especially in the summer, because although we think that, you know, everything likes a sunny, hot spot in the garden, it's not really necessarily true. You know, all crops need a lot of water for a start. Yeah.
Now, what are some ideal things people can actually consider growing in the summertime? I know you mentioned starting in the summer. It actually starts back in the spring, but give us an idea of what some of those might be.
What, you mean the crops that have already been started?
Right.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, at this time of year in the UK in particular, I mean, we're dealing with the first, you know, tomatoes are just coming on the plants. They're needing water regularly, otherwise they'd end up splitting and not ripening properly. Peppers, you know, sweet peppers, chili peppers, those sort of crops that generally are out in the sun. You know, if you are getting really scorching days, especially in the middle of the day, they can suffer a bit. I mean, I tend to rig up like, you know, all sort of parasols to shade them a little bit, really, during the hottest part of the day, because they can get damaged. I mean, there's a lot of crops now that obviously will be finishing. Things like peas and beans tend to be early crops, so we're kind of in the last part of that, really. And so, I mean, once the peas and beans are out, then there's space to grow something else. Although, actually, before we go on to anything else, I would say that, you know, when you finish with your peas and beans, don't pull the plants up, just dig it back into the ground, because they catch nitrogen and set it in the soil for your next crops. Just something I just remembered to say there. Yeah, okay, I'm rambling again, aren't I?
No, you're doing just fine.
I've been locked in my office all day, so I haven't spoken to anybody, so here I go.
Oh, there you go. Now, what about types of herbs?
Herbs for now, well, I mean, a lot of herbs obviously are perennials, so, you know, they'll be green all the way through the year. Although, actually, it's a good time to start cuttings. Things like the woodier herbs, like, I don't know, thyme, sage, rosemary, those sort of things. You know, once they've finished flowering, you can take cuttings from them, start new plants for next year. Or, in fact, what is a nice thing to do is take cuttings and then get them growing and give them as, like, Christmas presents or something, you know. They make lovely gifts, herb plants.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise the herbs at the moment, where they should be in full bloom as such and be used. I mean, the more you use herbs, the better they are, really. You know, don't forget them, really. That's the secret with herbs. Keep using them.
Keep using them over and over because they actually are very detrimental to a very healthy diet, actually.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. I mean, the thing is, right the way, things like, I mean, my garden, I can keep sage and rosemary definitely all the year round, and it'll be green. And, you know, they're great herbs to grow. I mean, rosemary is a good herb to help, you know, build your immune system and fight off colds and all sorts of things in the winter months. I mean, I think it's just as important, really, to kind of remember that, you know, we should be growing food for the winter rather than just the summer crops. Mm-hmm.
Just like they have in the story of the ant and the aardvark, you know, one sits around all summer long while the other one just diligently works, and then one starves and freezes to death in the winter while the other one enjoys the comfort of the fire and plenty of food in the cabinet. Now, when it comes to the summertime, that's not that any other time of the year you'll see less of it, but generally you see more bugs and pests that sort of infiltrate the garden. And I know up in the Northwest you tend to have things like, for instance, raccoons and types of birds that go and can actually really destroy a garden for the most part. What can people do to actually alleviate that as much as possible or perhaps eliminate it altogether?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, each different animal, as such, will need different, you know, prevention techniques. I mean, I don't know anything about raccoons and their habits, but, you know, I mean, birds, for example, there's all sorts of wildlife-friendly netting that you can put over your crops to save them. And also, another thing that works well is, you know, old CDs and DVDs, things that are scratched and, you know, not playable anymore. If you string them up over your crops, birds really don't like them. You know, the shininess, it sees them off a bit. Larger animals don't really know. I think that's very regional, really. You have to kind of deal with them how, you know, everybody else is dealing with them in your area. I mean, the worst things, I mean, I find that are pretty universal are the aphids. I mean, they do, you know, the black fly, green fly, those kind of little bugs that you don't notice until suddenly your plant is covered in them. Now, ladybirds are great for that. Ladybirds will eat bucket loads of aphids. So if you can encourage them to... I don't know. Actually, I think you call them ladybugs, do you?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, yeah. But they're great to encourage in the garden. And also, I mean, I suppose, you know, let nature take care of itself. If you encourage the good things, then, you know, the bad stuff kind of tends to go away a bit, really. Mm-hmm. Frogs and toads are great for getting rid of things like slugs and snails. You know, a small pond in the garden will encourage the frogs.
So basically to eliminate slugs and snails, you're saying a little small pond where you get frogs? Mm.
We used to have, in my house in France, we had a few toads that would be always in residence, and they'd sit outside the front door and catch mosquitoes as they came in around the house, which was wonderful, you know. Mm-hmm. And all they were just encouraged with a little bit of water here and there in the garden. Mm. But yeah, I mean, encourage the good guys, really. Right.
Yeah, focus on what's good and you'll have more of it. Focus on the bad and you'll have more of that too.
I think so. I think it's a bit, I don't know, it's not a good feeling to start putting down poisons and things like that. I mean, lots of people swear by all kinds of remedies. I've heard of things like mothballs and castor oil beans and cayenne pepper and all sorts that will get rid of certain animals, but, you know, I mean, in some areas we used to have a problem with mice eating, like, the pea seeds before taking them away, before they'd even germinated. But, you know, a couple of cats around the place soon got rid of them, so...
In fact, it was noticeable earlier, just not more than a month ago, I started noticing some wild kittens were making their appearance on the deck, and So I started just throwing just a little bit of food just to kind of keep them around. Pretty soon they got so ambitious they started coming in the house. It's like, no, this isn't going to work here. But I was asked by my wife, she says, what do you do with that for? I said, because cats are really good about keeping rats and mice away. What do you think kept Egypt in their wheat and why they worship the cat gods?
Mind you, I mean, I think probably the best thing is not to actually feed them too much.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Just enough where they're going to be around waiting, anyway. But they'll have to actually find their own food, so... Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were wild anyway, so, you know.
Now, let's talk about, as I was mentioning earlier in the program, is that sometimes summer isn't exactly as straightforward, you know, sunny, warm weather all the time. It can actually change. Some days it can be just tremendously hot, and other days it can be cold or even wet and rainy as it is over there in England. What are some ways people can actually deal with these adverse weather conditions?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think the best thing to do is really be in tune with it. I mean, I know, you know, everybody listens to the weather forecast and everything. I don't tend to do that because, you know, the weather forecast is very kind of broadly speaking, isn't it? If you go out in the garden in the morning and kind of smell the air, I know this sounds really silly, but I do this, you know. You can usually tell if it's going to rain or not. You can kind of get a feeling. Once you're out in the garden a lot, you sort of know what's going to happen. I mean, all the old gardeners will tell you, oh, it's going to rain, you know, later on in the day, and they know exactly, almost to the hour. And so I think it's just a matter of getting in tune with it on that level. But then again, you know, if the weather really does turn, you should really protect, you know, crops that like the sunny days with, I don't know, some sort of plastic cover, you know, put a cloche over them or something. A couple of mobile cloches around that place is really handy, especially if you've got a vegetable garden, you know, that you can just pop one over a line of, I don't know, like I said, tomatoes or peppers or something, just to protect them from a really heavy rainfall. And, of course, as well, the other thing is with heavy rain that it does tend to wash the nutrients out of the soil quite quickly. So it may be best to feed the crops more if you have had particularly heavy rainfall. Wind as well is a nuisance. It's been really windy today. I mean, I've been chasing pots around the garden all day when I've got out of my office space. But, you know, I mean, again, it's sheltering them, really. I mean, looking after them, I think, you know, that's the biggest thing with plants. We tend to sort of put things in the garden and we can easily shut the door and forget about them. Like I said about the herbs earlier, you know, it's so easy to forget about them. But a little bit of, you know, TLC and a bit of use and they'll thrive and flourish in the garden, you know.
It seems, too, what's really unique about the summertime is when the day seems ideal, where it's not too hot or it's not wet, is that you can actually spend time in the garden, as you were suggesting earlier, is becoming in tune with the environment. That's kind of a real Zen way of being here now, it sounds like.
I love it. I do actually love being out in the rain, as long as it's not too heavy, of course. Right. But there are all sorts of advantages. I mean, if you do, you know, if you don't mind being in the rain in your garden, for example, if you're thinning carrots, it's best to do it in the rain because it deters the carrot fly, and they don't pick up the scent so easily. And it's also easier to thin out tiny plants when the soil is wet. So I mean, you know, enjoy it really. I mean, we have to have the rain, so yeah, I just like to enjoy it.
Now, after your crops have actually flowered, bloomed, what should you do with them afterwards? After you've sort of reaped what you've sown?
Well, there's a number of things really. I mean, like I said earlier, the peas and beans should definitely be left. Dig the plants back into the soil and the roots because there'll be nitrogen fixed in those plants, and that will be really useful for the next crops that you put on that ground. Most of it can be composted, or anything that's diseased or you know wasn't really a healthy plant is probably best burnt. on the, autumn bonfires or an incinerator if you've got one. Because you don't really want to encourage anything diseased to be in your compost heap, just in case. It's best to have it as clean as possible, really. I think that's about it, really. Some of the larger plants, like sweet corn, for example, the stems, the long stem tends to be very hard. It doesn't compost very quickly, so it's not a bad idea to kind of break that up into pieces. I used to use one of those, I don't know what they're called actually, they're kind of a shredding machine where you can put long branches in and it breaks it up into shavings. You can actually buy these machines. They're not really I don't think they're very expensive at all. You can hire them. So if you've got a lot of prunings or very thick, hard stems to get rid of, it's best to maybe shred them first before composting. It'll help break the soil down as well.
I had one guest on our program, and it was interesting when he talked about composting. He says, I pretty much compost anything that's biodegradable.
Well,
that up and to includes what you've eaten. It goes in the garden. He says his trash bill went down to next to nothing.
Well, this is it. I tend to do the same. I've always composted just about everything, but really, maybe somebody who was a little bit more, liked to sterilise their garden a little bit more. They would just rather burn the diseased crops, that's all. I think that's just, I tend to think that, like you say, anything that will rot down in the end. But just in case. Especially if you've got a small garden and you're, in a larger area, it tends to kind of look after itself a little bit more anyway. In a larger area where you've got more going on your compost. If you've just got little bits and pieces here and there, I'd rather keep it clean as much as possible, really. That's just how I see it anyway.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, that's for sure. The last thing you need is a dirty area that attracts those kinds of creatures you really don't want around. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, this is also a wonderful opportunity for, parents and grandparents to really indulge their children in something other than sitting on their iPhones and watching cable television.
Well, yeah. I love getting the kids out in the garden. I've got grandchildren now who, they just adore it, really, and they love fiddling around in the garden with me. And I think it's great for them. I think, it's good education. You can talk about what is good for you, what isn't. And I think also when kids have actually grown the crops, they're much more likely to be into their 5-a-day thing. I know my grandchildren, they grow a lot of strawberries, and they're the first ones out there in the morning, strawberries for breakfast with their cereal. Fresh and organic. What could be better, really?
Certainly a different taste than what you might buy at a mass-produced supermarket.
Oh, definitely. I avoid supermarkets as much as possible.
And what's really amazing, too, is that when it comes to gardening, you really don't need a whole lot of area to grow. But it seems like a vast variety of things that you can have, but as well as also the abundance. It just keeps repeating and keeps giving.
Definitely. Yeah, I've just been doing the layouts for another book I've written, and honestly, the stuff that you can grow in containers, and you can grow all sorts of, strawberry planters and potato planters these days are specially designed to be put on a patio or a balcony. If you live in a flat or an apartment, you don't need a garden. You can grow practically anything. Herbs on windowsills, my windowsills are always crammed with various herbs that I'm starting and sorting out and experimenting with, And it's great, they work. Big pots, you don't even need a garden, really. I think a lot of people, they tend to, I've spoken to a lot of people who say, oh, yeah, but I haven't got enough space in my garden. And it's kind of, in a way, it's a kind of an excuse, even though they don't realise they're making it, because you don't need the garden. You can still get lots of good stuff just from a few pots on a windowsill. And why not, eh?
I know when I was visiting in Chicago, taking the old car into the city, just exactly what you're talking about. I mean, here a lot of apartments or flats are crammed together, but then you're seeing people make use of any available outdoor space up into and including the rooftops. And it was really quite creatively amazing, some of the things that I was beginning to see.
Great. I love seeing that. I just love it. Yeah. Yeah, well, the more you can... I mean, the thing is, because, nature is the most creative thing we could possibly think of, really, and being in touch with it in whatever shape or form, it makes for all sorts of inspirational ideas, really. I mean, if ever I get stuck with whatever I'm doing, I could wander around the garden and it all kind of puts, all fits into place again.
So exciting, gardening, how you can beautify your home and also improve your health all at the same time.
Well, that's what it's there for. I think we just, over the centuries, if you like, we've kind of just come away from that and, started living in boxes and not really taking much notice of the outdoor space, which is a shame, I mean, I don't know whether I mentioned it to you last time we spoke, but, there is a waiting list in England at the moment for allotments. Do you have allotments in
Not that I'm familiar with. This is pretty much a capitalist society.
Well, these are just like pieces of land that a local council will own, the local government will own, and people can rent them to grow their vegetables. And there's a waiting list in England at the moment.
Yeah, actually, I'm very familiar with that. I've noticed that community colleges are beginning to create community gardens as well as local organic farmers.
Right.
Yeah, living here in the state of Oregon, you see a lot of that going on here. It's quite incredible. In fact, it was interesting because one of the ways that was started, mentioning Chicago earlier, was about a farmer named Farmer John, and there's actually a really wonderful documentary on him called The Real Dirt on Farmer John. And he was quite an eclectic fellow, but anyway, he got caught up in the agriculture, and realized, I'm going down in flames here, and I'm not producing really anything quality, according to the rules that I have to live by. So I got to a point that, and this was a farm that he had since his great-grandfather, and had eventually lost it, but somehow he came around, was able to get it back. I can't even remember the story. It's been quite a while, but began this idea of bringing community in, that you could come in and you could participate in the garden, and that could be one way that you can earn, the produce that you help grow. But just found people were coming out of the cities and just enjoying their days, and that the crops and things that he was growing, just the bounty of it was incredible versus, the big business of agriculture, because it was all being done naturally. People were learning, and they were putting love back into the garden.
Yeah, I've noticed there's been a few little community projects going on in England with that as well. And it's great. I think everybody should be encouraged just to grow something. It doesn't really matter what it is. Whatever takes your fancy, really. Mm-hmm. I think that is the point. I think if you grow something that you want to grow, I found people have said to me, I don't want to garden. It means digging trenches and growing potatoes, and I don't even like them. Well, so don't grow potatoes, It's something you do like.
Yeah, just like if you don't like cats, then you don't own a cat, and if you like monkeys, then have a monkey,
Exactly, yeah.
Fascinating. Is there a website people can find out more about your work? And I know that your book, Grow Your Own Pharmacy, is a fascinating read for anybody who wants to realize that you really don't need to go to the drugstore unless it's an extreme emergency when you're actually taking care of yourself, or allowing your plants if you want to take care of it. What's that?
That's another shop I never go to.
Yeah. No supermarkets, no pharmacies.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have actually got a new blog. My personal blog is linda-gray.co.uk. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, where anybody can find me and all about me, and my other website, my gardening website, and what have you. But yeah.
Now, one of the things, too, that I think is really fun about, especially when you think of summer gardening and the kinds of plants that you actually put out in your garden, is how it attracts a lot of the kind of wildlife that can be very enjoyable to watch. I know there'll be times that I'll catch myself close to sundown watching a little TV, then I'll shut it off because I know if I just go outside and sit, I'm going to be tremendously entertained with all sorts of things. And it's really neat to be lost like that.
It really is amazing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just that, especially early evening, and maybe even if it's just rained and you get the smell of the flowers as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, listening to buzzing and watching everything still being busy when you're sitting there with your feet up is lovely.
Mm-hmm. Attracting butterflies as well.
yeah, butterflies and bees. I mean, that's what. Well, apart from the cabbage white butterfly, of course, but because they really are mean in the garden. I mean, they look very pretty, but they can destroy a whole line of cabbages in an evening. So,
nature finds a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the butterfly's beautiful, but, they do lay eggs on. I mean, actually, it's nice to watch them and then quickly kind of dispose of the eggs after they've gone, which does seem rather un-Zen-like, but hey,
We got to have our coleslaw.
Exactly.
We demand it. Our sauerkraut, it's a necessity.
Yeah, we're out there working here. Hang on.
Well, Linda Gray, thank you for being on the program today. Please go ahead and give out your blog information again.
It's linda-gray.co.uk. And it's Gray, Gray.
Look forward to the next time you and I talk.
Yes, it's been lovely to talk to you.
Next
time will be in the autumn, or fall, I should say.
In the fall, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being on the program.
Okay, cheers. Bye-bye, Daniel.
And to find out more about Linda Gray as well, also pick up a copy of Grow Your Own Pharmacy. If that's not a place you really want to visit, then here's an opportunity for you to change that. We also encourage you to visit our website at beyond50radio.com. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. We'll also post Linda Gray's blog information there, so you can just click through and go right to it and see what she's up to and chat. We thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.